I want to come to you with a special presentation because this is a serious time that we're all in right now, what we're experiencing. We got a global health crisis, and the presumptive Democratic nominee chosen by a third of the country already spoke. Joe Biden graced us with his presence. Now, mind you, I haven't had a chance to vote, and neither has a number of Americans had an opportunity to cast their ballot. But that, be it as it may, doesn't matter to the powers that be in the Democratic Party, nor their operatives in corporate media. It's time for Bernie to cap it in. Well, I just wanted to highlight a little bit about the front runner, Joe Biden, and his speech today to the American people who are dealing and grappling with what is an uncertain future, with a global crisis at our doorstep that we are in the midst of, where lives are lost daily, that has Maryland, the state in which I live, has seen a 678% increase in the number of coronavirus contaminations in patients in the last 24 hours. Ladies and gentlemen, I had the opportunity to watch this Joe Biden speech. I'd like to share a portion of it with you, and then we'll have a conversation about this supposed Democratic nominee.
Good morning. I hope you and your family are doing well in these difficult and anxious times, confusing times. Like all families, the Biden family is adjusting to new ways. Less time together, more worrying about friends and relatives, concerns about those who are isolated or suffering due to the coronavirus. As Americans, we may be physically apart, but we are truly all in this together, and you know it. Let me say something right up front. When we stood as one, this nation has never, ever been defeated when we've been together. And we're not going to be defeated now. The pandemic of 1918, the Great Depression, 2 world wars, we overcame them all. And out of each crisis, we emerged stronger. And we will again. This new enemy may be unseen, but we have the tools, the expertise, and most importantly, the spirit to defeat it. But we need to move, and we need to move fast. You know, it matters of public health. It matters of our economy. It matters how fast we move for both. Later today, you'll hear from the president in his daily briefing. These briefings are an important opportunity to inform and reassure the American public. They're not a place for political attacks or to lash out at the press. They're about the American people. So I hope today and in the days ahead, the president will give us the unvarnished truth. That's what the American people need and what they deserve. I hope he lets the medical experts and FEMA leaders and others carrying out the work to take center stage, to hear from them directly. And I hope we hear less talk and see more evidence of fast action. My principal focus today and every day will be on what we should do to get this response fixed, to save lives, to provide economic assistance to the tens of millions of Americans who need it and need it now, and are going to need it in the weeks and months ahead. It starts with adopting a mindset of real urgency. For too long, the warning signs were ignored. For too long, the administration said the threats were, quote, under control, quote, contained, quote, like the flu. The president says no one saw this coming. Well, that's just not accurate. Our intelligence officials were warning of coronavirus threat in January. Just based on public information that I had, I warned the threat was getting worse way back on January the 27th and urged the need to put science first, draw on emergency funds to get response started, think about invoking disaster powers to respond. Many of us talked about the need to get the U.S. scientists on the ground to see firsthand what was happening in China, rather than relying on what came from China. My point is not simply that the president was wrong. My point is that the mindset that was slow to recognize the problem in the first place, to treat it with the seriousness it deserved, is still too much a part of how the president is addressing the problem. South Korea detected their first case of coronavirus on the same day we did. But they had tests and sophisticated tracing programs to stop the spread of the virus, so they didn't have to put the entire country on lockdown. We had none of that. So we were left with the only extreme social distancing measures currently in place. That's a failure of planning and preparation by the White House. Today, months later, Americans who need to be tested or still have no access to tests in many parts of the country. And in many places, our healthcare system teeters on the brink of collapse. Hospital beds are filling. Doctors and nurses are already running out of critical equipment. The federal government needs to coordinate getting medical supplies out to every corner of the country so we don't have governors competing against one another. As of late yesterday, we're told that the president still has not activated the authority under the Defense Production Act, which I and others call for him to invoke immediately and act on, to direct American manufacturers to make essential supplies. Trump keeps saying that he's a wartime president. Well, start to act like one. To paraphrase a frustrated President Lincoln, writing to an inactive General McClellan during the Civil War, quote, "If you don't want to use the Army, may I borrow it," end of quote. You know, we need to get in motion today, what we should have set in motion weeks ago. Any public health expert will tell you that in a crisis like this, you can't move too fast. You can only move too slowly. Let me be clear. Donald Trump is not to blame for the coronavirus, but he does bear responsibility for our response. And I, along with every American, hope he steps up and starts to get this right. No, this isn't about politics. This is simply too much at stake, too many lives, too many livelihoods, too many homes and families and businesses and communities at risk. I've laid out a very detailed, in-depth plan for what I think we should be doing. You can read it on joebiden.com. We need immediate action on testing, on research for treatments and vaccines, on leading a global response to beat the virus.
All right. After 4 minutes of meandering conversation about the badness of Trump, his disapproval of Donald Trump's actions, we finally get him to start talking about what he thinks needs to happen. We're talking about a platitude-laden, meandering farce of a speech. Am I the only one who sees Joe Biden there in a sedated sense of detachment from reality? This is the guy that they tell us should be the standard bearer for the Democratic Party. A man who comes out after not being present for the last 6 days. Meanwhile, Americans are being affected and infected across the country, and finally he sashays into his living room. Folks, I'm in a basement right now. It didn't take me 6 days. It seems like instead of giving us direction and giving people a resounding reassurance of where we're going or what needs to happen, or that, yeah, you chose the right guy, Joe Biden, it's more of a he's still campaigning for a job. Right now, it's not the time for anybody to be campaigning for a position. Right now, it's time to be alleviating the fears that real people have about a situation that's unprecedented in our history in the last, 100 years. A pandemic that's got people boarded up in their houses, holed up in their homes. That has people laid off from work. That has people who are forced to go to work because they have no benefits, they have no other income, and the checks or the bills are still coming into the mailbox. And instead of Joe Biden focusing on anything that I just said or saying anything in a way that is tangible, real, or makes you connect with him, we get this horrific speech from a glossy-eyed, vacant talking head. You know, slamming Trump, that's a nice pastime, but it's not what anyone is concerned with at the moment. And that's why to get down to brass tacks on this, guys, so that we're really clear. I, like many others, are no Joe Biden. We're not supportive of Joe Biden. We see Joe Biden is more of the past that we need to get away from. And we would love to see the American our country, our government move forward in a new direction. But we've been told time and time again that no, people don't want a new direction. They don't want a revolution. They want to go backwards or to something cozy with Joe Biden. And to those people, I'd like to just ask you, what is it in this man that you see that reassures you that he can do any of these things that you said he can? What is it in Joe Biden's speech that makes you feel safe? Or that he has any inkling what's happening? I mean, for God's sakes, man, the guy hasn't spoken for a week, and this is what he gives you. This. And for this, I and many others have had to sit back, be berated, and condescended to about how he is the guy. He is the man. He is the leader. He is the best choice or best chance against Donald Trump. If this is the best chance against Donald Trump, there is no chance against Donald Trump. And it's bigger than that now. That was then. Now we have no hope. Millions of people could die from this virus, and we have a man who could go absent for 7 days. I'm sorry. The last time he spoke was March 17th. Today's the 23rd. 6 days. 6 days was the last time that Joe Biden spoke, and this is what we get. Platitudes, comments about Donald Trump, airy, we're striving, and what, no, where are the specifics about what needs to happen? Now, don't get me wrong, the right, or those, let's just call it what it is, the Fox News folks, they're focusing on the goofs and the gaffes, but I'm not focusing on the goofs and gaffes. I'm focusing on the lack of a pathway, the lack of leadership that is present in this speech, the lack of specific directives, the lack of reassurance. Look, this is not about Democrat or Republican, because I have a Republican governor. His name is Larry Hogan. I didn't vote for Larry Hogan. I voted for Benjamin Jealous. But in this crisis situation, my Republican governor has been out front. My Republican governor has been active and a part of solutions every day. Larry Hogan holds a press conference where he addresses the issues. You mean to tell me the Democratic presumptive nominee, for which many of you in cable media and some in independent media have said we need to coalesce around, this guy cannot do as well as my Republican governor, Larry Hogan? He cannot get out in front. He's talking about technical difficulties in addressing a pandemic? Really? The closest we got to a Joe Biden actually interacting with us during the last 7 days, 6 days, is one of his surrogates talking about he was on Instagram making a post of DJ D Nice. Really? You can't make this up. I'm not making this up. Now, for the Fox News folks who are focusing on points about Joe Biden, I want to show you what they've been playing on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
Beef up the number of responders dealing with these crush of cases. And in addition to that, we have to make sure that we are in a position that we are. Well, let me go to the second thing. I've spoken enough of that. The president must use the Defense Production Act. Beef up.
You want to call that a cheap shot? Was it a cheap shot? No, it wasn't a cheap shot. It's what he broadcasted. That's your guy. You want that guy to be our guy, and you want that guy to lead this country into oblivion, it appears. He had 6 days to get this right. He comes out talking about FEMA trucks. He talks about coordinating, getting supplies out. We already know we need to get supplies out. We already know people need funding, funds, money. We already know this. How? What are your specifics? What are your tangible steps that you have the pressure Listen, guys, Joe Biden is in a position where he can apply pressure to Donald Trump to get things done. And instead of having any specifics whatsoever, he meanders and talks about platitudes and airy, lofty talk about the soul of America in 1912 or 1940. He's not talking specific enough about what's happening right here. I don't think it's crazy to say maybe there's a problem with Joe. I don't think it's a swipe or a diss to call out what is obvious to anyone with eyeballs. Now that we've taken a look at Joe Biden, I'd like to share with you a brief portion of the daily live stream that a true leader has broadcasted to the American public about what steps need to be taken, demonstrating that he's in tune with what's happening and tries to quell fears and give some type of directive action, step-by-step action for what needs to happen. Compare the two.
A wife lost her job. Husband may lose his job. They got a mortgage payment coming up on April 1st, and they have car payments on 2 cars. That is their reality. And what happens if they have no income? What happens? Are they going to be able to keep their house? And that's just one example. There are millions of examples. Last night, 2 nights ago, we talked to a representative of the restaurant workers organizing effort. And she was talking about millions of workers who are living on tips. They're making $2 or $3 an hour on tips, on salary, on wages, and then they get tips on top of that. These people have nothing in the bank. What happens when they lose their job? What happens to millions of people? The 40% of American people who do not have $400 in the bank for an emergency. So you got half of our country living paycheck to paycheck, and now suddenly those paychecks stop. How are they going to feed their families? How are they going to keep their telephones? How are they going to keep their lights on? What happens if their kid gets sick? How do they get to a doctor? So there is enormous economic anxiety taking place all across this country. Let me just very briefly touch upon what other countries are doing in response to the crisis. In the United Kingdom, in Germany, in Denmark, and in Norway, these countries are moving aggressively to guarantee 75, 80%, and in some cases 100% of the paychecks of workers in businesses that commit to not laying off employees. In other words, in one of those countries, if an employer says, okay, we're going to keep you on the payroll, the government is guaranteeing between 80% and 100% of that paycheck. And in my view, that is exactly what we should be doing in this country right now. Is that a radical statement? Of course it is. But these are unprecedented times. And we must spend whatever it takes to make sure that every family in America is made whole, is not made desperate by this crisis. And so it is my view that workers who are unemployed, regardless of their previous eligibility for unemployment, and that's an important point because right now, unbelievably, most workers are not covered by unemployment compensation. And we got to throw that out of the door and make sure that every worker, whether you're driving an Uber car, whether you are a waitress, whether you're a waiter, whether you're a so-called independent contractor, every worker in America needs to know that he or she is going to be able to retain their income up to at least $75,000 a year. In addition to that, we need to provide $2,000 monthly, every month, payment to every man, woman, and child in America until the crisis ends. I know some of my Republican colleagues are talking about, a one-time $1,000 payment. Really? Really? Yeah, that'll last you for 2 or 3 weeks. And what happens after that? Once again, in this unprecedented moment in American history, we must act in an unprecedented way, no matter what it costs. And that means to guarantee to every man, woman, and child in this country that we will make them whole, that we're not going to leave them out hanging, losing their homes, getting evicted from their apartments, losing their ability to communicate. Furthermore, we need to make sure that every worker in America has paid family and medical leave, not just the 20% of workers who are currently have that benefit. Again, we are the only major country not to guarantee paid family and medical leave. That is beyond pathetic. And in this crisis, we have to make sure that workers do not go to work when they are sick because they are fearful of losing that paycheck. That is insane, and that is something that has to be done right now.
It's like night and day. Like a night and day. You know, I've been told that Bernie Sanders doesn't have the ability to connect with black folks, that he somehow doesn't understand. And I've been told this a lot by black folks in corporate media, or black folks who are retained, who are employed or receive salaries from other candidates. I want you to know that this is on your head, that we have Joe Biden, because Joe Biden didn't start to deteriorate and get to this abysmal positioning, state of mind that he has now. That didn't happen overnight. He's been showing signs of deterioration and lack of leadership for months, while you fixate on your paycheck and fixate on quibbling on Twitter about who you think was a better black friend. We have the comparison here is so starkly different between Bernie Sanders understanding what normal, regular Americans need at this time and Joe Biden being in the clouds, in the weeds. He's on his Corvette eating ice cream. How can you look in the mirror after saddling us with this? I'm talking to you, Jim Clyburn. How can you look in the mirror, sir, after saddling South Carolina voters with a man who can't complete a sentence, with a man who can't read his teleprompter, with a man who doesn't know what is going on, has no plan? Is he talking about family medical leave? Is he talking about that? Is he talking about unemployment, even for those who didn't qualify for unemployment earlier or weren't receiving it earlier? Is Joe Biden calling out the freaking industries that are trying to capitalize off of this tragic situation? The airline industry wanting $50 billion. The private space industry wanting $5 billion. And the candy industry, Mars Bars wants $50 million. For what? When was the last time you heard Joe Biden address any of this? He's not addressing it. He's been gone almost a week, and he comes back with no specifics. Airy talk, and it's on your head, Clyburn. It's on your head, Roland Martin. It's on your head. All of you are responsible for this man. And even in his deteriorated state, even in his lack of performance, his lack of stepping up to the plate, being ready for this moment, even Joe Biden said in a crisis, character is revealed, where either he lacks character or ability. Either way, he is not the guy. And even in this obvious display, you have yet to come out and call it what it is, because you are more concerned with your future employment opportunities. You are more concerned with your allegiance to a party than you are concerned about average working folk. How can you tell me you're more concerned about average working folk? Joe Biden can't even come out and talk about evictions being halted and foreclosures being halted in a specific, tangible way. It's disgusting, it's repugnant, it's beyond the pale that you would be silent now. Look, I'm not here to suggest that Donald Trump is better. Donald Trump is worse in his own ways. In his own ways. As he babbles about blame, playing the blame game and pointing fingers other directions. It's worthless, it's petty, and it's selfish. But we already know who Donald Trump is, don't we? And if we aren't careful, we will re-elect Donald Trump, because no one, even in his selfish pettiness, he is still at least coherent and able to enunciate. This is a despicable display. It's up to those with a conscience to step up and call it for what it is. I don't want to hear about Joe Biden having a big heart or being a decent man. This is not about his decency. This is his competency. This is not about, is he loving or caring or warm. This is about, can he perform? This isn't about, can you rank on Donald Trump? I assure you, most Americans are not concerned about that, especially not now. It's about who can lead us in a time of crisis. To those people watching who are not in the media space, who are regular working people who hold different jobs in different industries, but are observing this now, I want you to think about the fact that we have a media that would prop up Joe Biden, that would prop up a man who obviously, as you look at him speak, you wonder, is this shit even real? Is this real? Is this a manufactured tape? Is this real? Is this a SNL skit? Did Dave Chappelle go back to Comedy Central? Is this going on? Who's wearing the hair plugs? Is someone wearing a Joe Biden mask? Is that really the guy? Yeah, that's the guy. You feel comfortable with that? That's your fighter. All right. What we try to do here is real independent media, real independent, unbought, unbossed coverage of issues that matter to real people without concern of backlash from establishment or from networks that we work for that are either connected to Donald Trump. I see you. We know what you are. We know what you do. Or connected to, directed by, or heavily influenced by the DNC or the Democratic Party. We know who you are. We see you too. So if you enjoy this content, you find this content useful and important at this time, I encourage you to join us. Become a member, subscribe, and do that today. I'm Real Tim Black. Find me on Twitter and Facebook. It is what it is, folks. We are in uncharted territory. The sharks are circling the river, and instead of having someone that's going to come up with a plan to get us out of harm's way, we got someone who's busy fishing. Not good enough.